Hi, and welcome back to the Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Matt McCullough from Aldermore Bank. And the reason why I wanted to get Matt onto the podcast was that, yes, he's the National Sales Manager for Aldermore Bank, and that is something that he'd driven to do and wanted to achieve. However, I wanted to sort of strip that down a little bit and understanding Matt a little bit more because, yes, I follow Matt on social media. I'm connected with him, and I can see that he is part of Aldermore Bank, he's the national sales manager there. But what you sort of see a lot more with Matt is not just about Aldermore, it's about the personality behind that. So he's very good at promoting his own brand, getting his personality out there. He does personal stuff on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, I wanted to get his thoughts on him, what he does, why he does it. And yeah, let's just get him on the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Matt. How are you?
Great, thanks for having me. Yeah, you well?
Yeah, very good, thank you. And no, thanks for agreeing to come on to the Mortgage Broker broadcast and going to hear about your journey and talk a lot of other things as well. That's exciting things that you're interested in looking to do. And also, I think the good thing is I like interviewing people on the podcast that I've not really had much interaction with before, not spoken to, because there's obviously people that come on the podcast that I know and know well. We've had advisors in the firm, but we've never really had any discussion informally or formally, shall we say.
No, it's interesting because, like I said, for those that listen and watching, this is the first time really we spoke, right? About mortgage as such, and I think that it is interesting how this can bring other people together. And you're right. The reason why you probably will have seen me is over the years, Aldermore has grown so much that the team that's in and around me now does a great job, and hopefully you've interacted with them. But yeah, it is interesting, but refreshing as well, because every day is a new day. Hence, I'm meeting a very experienced mortgage broker today for the first time in years. So brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So no, brilliant. So first of all, you've given a bit of hint there, but just do you want to give people, for those people that don't know who you are, and just give a bit of a background, your journey in financial services and where you're at?
Yeah, so to be dead clean, my journey, like most people will tell you, they fell into financial services, right? I'm pretty sure there's if I ever write an autobiography one day, that might be the title, right? But assuming I stay in it. So I fell into it. I came working at Aldermore actually it's 9 years ago in August I started. So 9 years ago, I went looking for a job I was working in a B2C sales environment in a call center, traditional stuff, general insurance, and then way back it was mobile phones. I even used to troll the high streets, believe it or not, of like Kendal, Stone, Stoke, trying to sell broadband in the street. That was a tough gig.
Wow.
Right. So
that is a good gig, that.
Yeah. And when you go into a role that allows you to, essentially relationship sales, if you can entice somebody to buy into you to purchase broadband on a rainy day in Kendal High Street, then most jobs can be quite simple, So that's kind of where I was grounded in terms of sales. I went for a few years in a call centre, and my journey at Aldermore started nearly 9 years ago, where I joined a brand new phone team that was set up to support intermediaries, basically move along their in-flight pipeline applications. Now, I joined Aldermore not by mistake, because I went looking to do a job that was going to get me into a service-led role as such. But at the same time, believe it or not, I was trained to be a heating engineer, right, and a plumber. Wow. And I thought that's where I would be. And then as the first few months went along working at Aldermore, whilst trying to juggle a qualification in plumbing, I found two things really important. One thing is I don't normally get soaking wet working in an office and speaking to brokers every day. There's been occasions where I might have been, but not that. Secondly, there's no progression. It didn't excite me, the plumbing side of things. I don't know what it was. I'm only 5'7". I must have thought I could be the English Mario. I'm not sure. But for me, I loved what Aldermore was doing, right? So at that point, you may or may not know an old employee of Aldermore, Rob Barnard. Did you speak to Rob Barnard? Right?
Yeah.
Rob Barnard's a great friend of mine. And when I joined Aldermore, his presence in intermediary mortgages is what sucked me in to do what I do. I always said I wanted to be Aldermore's Rob Barnard. I'm not quite there yet, but I always want to be that. I want to be a presence in the intermediary market, and I want to help brokers get more out of their businesses by using specialist lenders. And so my very first career development conversations sort of months, probably 3 months into joining Aldermore, passing the probation, actually, the 3-month period, was, what do you want to do? And I remember writing, I want Rob Barnard's job. So my focus has been, I want to be a presence in the intermediary market ever since I joined Aldermore for that first 3 months after we binned the plumbing. I don't like getting wet. And then here we are today, really. So that's quite a long answer, I suppose.
But no, it's not. It's an interesting one, though, Matt, definitely.
Yeah, and I think, looking back, also talking about how I've done that, really, and how it's happened is the growth of Aldermore and the growth of specialist lending, to be fair. Because if it wasn't for the likes of so many challenger banks and so many specialist lenders, seeking the opportunity to help the clients that aren't getting the mortgage they need, we wouldn't have grown as much. So that's quite a good chat. You need competition to thrive, right? And we've had a lot of that. And at the start, it's probably fair to say 12 years ago when we first started mortgage lending, we probably didn't have that. Now we've got a lot of that. So we're on our toes, and we've really got to be fresh and honest about it. But when I first started in sunny Wilmslow, where I am today, there was probably about 25 people in the office in total. Fast forward 9 years, and in the sales structure itself, including the support team, there's circa 40 people just in that setup. So it shows you how we've grown over the past 9 years, and I've
massively
been, lucky to be part of that, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's massively grown. And I think that because of what I've been doing and worked in the intermediary market and mortgage broking for this, like a similar sort of time, I've sort of seen Aldermore, been dealing with Aldermore right at the start, really, and then seeing them grow over the years, which has been great. That's absolutely been amazing to sort of see as a lender in the intermediary market. It's sort of seen a massive growth. I think one thing I really wanted to sort of pick up on, which it's always the same with the podcast. Go on, think about an agenda, think what we're going to talk about, but then it's always things that sort of come out that then I think, I didn't know that, and I want to talk about that a bit more. Because one thing that you sort of said on there was about the broadband sales on a cold, wet day in Kendal. And this is something that I sort of do get on with sometimes, is that when I speak to a few brokers who don't like the fear of rejection. They have the fear of rejection. They don't like picking up the phone to a lead. They're sort of scared of what's going to be said. And then they're thinking, I don't like to cold call. I don't like to. And that for me is like, because I wasn't selling broadband on Kendal High Street, but I have done a door knocking sales role, and you're knocking on somebody's door in the depths of South Yorkshire on a Sunday lunchtime, when the people are in their Sunday lunch and stuff like that, and you're selling them something that they don't necessarily want. That's cold calling. That's like, I had that grounding. Yeah. You had that grounding as well, which is interesting to hear your sort of take on that, of how grounding that was for you at that time.
It was very interesting. So, to be honest with you, so I've always been good with people, always. Ever since I was in primary school, I was always getting told off for talking too much, and just building relationships all the time. So yeah, in school it was a hindrance. I'm always getting moaned at. But in later life, I'm first and foremost, I'm a people person. The guys that work for me will tell you that. The people that meet me regularly will tell you that. And interestingly enough, so yeah, into the cold calling sales world, which was literally, feet on the ground, sometimes not an umbrella in the air, and you're getting soaked. And you had to try and think of a way that you can actually get people to approach you. And you'll approach thousands of people in a week. You might get 8 sales, but that is the bare percentages that you've got to play with, right? So going to your position around knocking doors on a Sunday and this, that, and the other, I think it's, to be honest with you, it's no dissimilar to the current world that we're in. Now, how did I find that for me? Before I go ahead there, sorry, how did I find that? It was very grounding. Well, it was, but I think the most important part is that you have to play on your strengths. And your strengths in that role has to be you. It has to be how you speak to people, how you come across, your friendly approach, your nature. It's no shock that if I tell you that if you are not good with people, you would not do well at that job, right? Because the knockbacks and rejections would just finish you off. And also the fact that you do get people that seemingly buy into your approach and then try to not run away physically, although that might have happened, face to face, but run away from the sale. You have to be quite resilient, but quite bought into the proactive peopleness at that point to get them bought into your product. The key thing about any of it, really, and I've always had this mantra in everything that I've done, right, is that in a sales role, you are promoting a product / offering. But if that's all you do, your presence and your existence will disappear when that product disappears, And I'll give you an example. If you set up let's have a look at Blockbuster. They spent years flogging us DVDs and videos at first, right? And then they went away, but they replaced them with videos and with DVDs, sorry. They spent years advertising DVD offers. Come and get your DVDs on a Friday. I used to love going picking out a horror film on a Friday, getting it back to watching with my mates, and then turn it off halfway through scared. But that was a Friday night as a school kid, and as a teenager, you maybe rent a film with your girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, what have you. Now that model they sold is dead now. Nobody buys DVDs anymore. It's all streaming. So their offering was promoted based purely on a physical presence. If you do the same, so if you go out and sell a product, so let's say as a lender, if I go out and sell a specific rate to a specific audience at a time, that rate goes, I also go. Does that make sense? So what I have to do is really make sure that the presence is felt based on the people and the promotional aspect of the brand, not just an offering. And that's kind of where I've always thought, because right into that point where I was really trying to sell what was, in my mind, a good product, not the best, because otherwise it was the best. It wouldn't need me trawling the high street trying to sell it. But if it was a good product for broadband way back in the day, and all I had to do was promote that brand and why it was important to them, promote the importance of having broadband, having reliable internet, and potentially getting utilities there as well. Now, if I promoted purely on the name, that name could be tarnished at one point, which later in life it did. That's that, gone. Dead. So that really gave me a good grounding.
No, I totally get your analogy there, to be fair, Matt. That's a great analogy, because it is about the people buying into you. It's not necessarily the product, the rate, or anything like that. And you've continued with that mindset through your quest for Rob's job, shall we say? Do you know what I mean? That drive, that motivate, that sort of, and you have sort of been successful. While you're 9 years at Aldermore, you've sort of progressed through, and obviously you've got what. Have you got what you wanted? Are you there now? Is that sort of, would you say that?
I mean, nearly. I think one day I want to run my own sales operation completely. At the moment in time at Aldermore, I head up our field sales team, and I'm involved with a lot of industry events. I'm a speaker at a lot of industry events, and I really, really enjoy that. For me, I'd love to sort of take ownership and all of that. And I've got some great leaders above me, Nick Parker and John Cooper are my immediate bosses, and they're brilliant and they support me in anything I want to do, which is great. And so, yeah, but actually, at the point of life where I'm at now and what I'm doing, if I was doing this forever, happy, I really enjoy it. And like I mentioned way back just shortly ago, is that it's the people. The people makes the job that because let's be fair, mortgages are boring, aren't they? Yeah. I mean, it's one of these things that I always think about this. You spend your life thinking about, I can't wait to get a job so I can get myself in a load of debt. That's literally what everyone does, right? And then when you try that is a bad way of looking at it. But in reality, that's what it is.
Yeah.
But it's good debt. It's manageable debt. And actually, it's debt that allows you to do stuff. Without that debt, people wouldn't have families potentially, No. And so that was my main driver. Get a secure job, tick. Get a mortgage / crippling debt, some people would call it, but it's not, it's manageable. And get a home to bring a family up, which I've done. And I'm happy. I am happy. And like I said, the people, it's what drives me. And it's meeting brokers every day, speaking to them every day, discussing I don't really discuss what we do, Aldermore. I like to discuss what brokers are doing. That's what keeps me going, because actually that helps me understand more around what I need to do, what my team needs to do, what our bank needs to do.
Definitely.
Because we should be building our products and our offering around intermediaries for what they want, and then position that as people, not brands.
No, definitely. And I think I just wrote down the word there, flipping, and I don't mean flipping as in flipping a house. I mean as in flipping the intermediary way of thinking with regards to a lender's point of view, because we've all been there in the meetings with BDMs and stuff like that. It's like, well, they clearly got a rota to filled. They've got to do so many visits and so many meetings, and it's just about, we've got the message out about this USP and this USP and stuff like that, and nobody actually flips that round and sort of says, and you'll get into another broker. And I think that we're going to come on to the social media aspect of it as well, because I feel that even though we've never spoken, I feel that I do know you from our connection on social media. Even though we've never interacted really with each other, I still see, and this is, we're going to talk about this because this is something that I do, because I never post personal stuff on any of my social media stuff. I just don't. Whereas for you, it's something that you do. But I think that's really, it is flipping on its head in terms of, you are the front of Aldermore, you are the national sales manager, but you are very keen to understand what brokers want and what they need from you, rather than you getting the message out there, this is the rate, this is what we'll do, this is our criteria, this is this, and it's just another meeting from a broker's point of view. And I think it's all about the relationship. That's the biggest thing that I've always been working with lenders as a mortgage broker, as I was. It was always about the relationship and having that one-to-one interaction, and knowing like about family, and knowing what goes on behind the scenes, and knowing the personal life and things like that, which you do get to know, because we know yours from your social media. Well, you more than likely you're going to then know about my background. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of, and that's so refreshing. It is so refreshing.
It is, and before we come on to that social media point, you mentioned something there about like flipping the way we talk about our brand on its head a little bit. I mean, you got to remember, I have to remember, that the company I work for, Aldermore, we're a small lender in comparison to the mammoths that are out there, and we have to be really honest with ourselves and think, on the curve that we're on to grow, if we've got, let's just make a figure up, a 3% market share, that means that 3 cases in 100 that you do, you might come across a product that we could help you with, right? Now, that's the boring side of it. The interesting part is, right, where do you get that business from? Because I'm asking that question then helps me identify 2 points. So if you told me that A, you get leads from online, you either source them indirectly, or you buy them in from somewhere, I know that a lot of the business that you will get will be the stuff that a lot of people may have turned away, which means that it's going to be more adverse and more complex. So I know that your offering there is complexity. It's more, dare I say, some people call it subprime, but it's non-standard. Whereas if I asked you, where does your business come from? And you say, friends and family mainly, I know that your primary driver is going to be service, right? Because you're not going to really want to put your best mate through a journey where it'll take you potentially 3 months to get a mortgage offer versus, an outsider that you've got on the internet that want a chance to get a mortgage because they could probably take that journey. The point is, I know where your key points could be in terms of what I should be offering you as a service from me and us as a company based on where you get your leads. That's just one question, And I always think of it like, if I am going to build a hotel in Spain, there's thousands. They all have the same stuff, don't they? A room, a bed, a toilet, and a pool, right? That's the same as a bank. They all give you money, they all give you a rate, and they all give you a roof, right? But what I need to do is find out what brings them to my hotel, i.e. my business, my bank. What brings the interest in my product to me? And then how do I offer that? I don't sell it because I'm not selling the mortgage. I'm not advising the client. How do I offer my services as a person to promote the brand that I work for? Essentially, how do I get you into my hotel? Because everyone else has got the same hotel.
No, and I think that's when you look at brokers being brokers, like you say, we get, as a business, we get direct leads, and through our own SEO and through our own sort of just direct what in terms of we do from a marketing point of view and from a business point of view. So we get those direct leads, but people will always need brokers. They always will. When you say you are pigeonholed to a certain extent a business from a broker's point of view. So yes, I've got brokers and no brokers that just rely on friends and family. They still do get the non-standard stuff. They still do, because people just want to work with somebody that they know and trust. And if they've already had a no elsewhere, they're on the reach out then for somebody that they know and trust. So it's still about knowing that business and how that broker particularly works. But people will always need brokers. I think that's far fundamental in terms of my outlook with where the industry is going, and that's exciting because it will, like you say, mortgage borrowing. I've been saying that for years. It's just who wakes up today thinking, you know what, I want to get X amount of pounds in debt. I want to pay every single month. I want to be paying out X amount of pounds. But it's just about what that brings, and the house and the home, and like you said about family and all those sorts of things. And that's what you have to focus on as a broker. It's not the rate. It's not that. It is about service. I think it's still about service to a certain extent with a non-standard. Like it still is. Service is just vital in terms of everything, really.
Yeah, that's the thing. Just to recap on that, it's not that, like I was saying, it's not that an external lead that you don't know isn't about service, because it absolutely is. But I think the point I was kind of trying to make, really, and probably not too well actually, is that if I am advising my mother on taking a mortgage, if I have to give a difficult message to my mother about that, it's harder than giving it to somebody that I don't know personally. That's probably where I should have articulated better. But yeah, absolutely. Service is a prime driver for everything. And that, for me, that's the icing on the cake. If you can offer something that others can't in the specialist world, because specialist mortgages, right, are, well, I'd like it to be one day, but you're not going to get a mortgage offer in 3 days every time. You would with a high street in the main. But, and that's a message that you buy these people into. However, it's still, even if it takes 12 weeks, your service to them is the most important thing that matters, isn't it, right? Because that's then, you get one lead in and you can push that out to hundreds if they've got good connections, if they recommend you, if they leave you reviews online. And that's a lot of that where social media comes in as well, massively.
So moving on to that, which is quite a nice tie-in to social media. So you have got a great presence on social media. It's something you've been, well, how long have you been focusing on your social media? How long have you seen that as important for you, Matt?
Important for me. So I think it's about 18 months, really. I used to, many years back, I actually did a blog many years back, actually, a footballing blog. And I actually visited this the other day, I just left it. Didn't carry it on. It was just something of a hobby, just that got me into, and it's had quite a lot of views over the years, and I might actually start to revisit that again. But it was about like failed old United players that we'd signed historically, like really poor United players. And so and I thought to myself, right, then I saw an opening. This was about 12 years ago, maybe 13 years ago. I saw an opportunity to use that to grow maybe a brand. I didn't know what I wanted to do at that time. I didn't know what the brand was. I didn't know what I could do, but I knew that at the time there was probably, well, let's use the figures as they are now. There's 7 billion people on the planet, right? Now, even if a third of them had access to social media, you've got just over 2 billion people more plus that could interact with you from anywhere on the planet. And that's mad, right? Now, that wasn't the reason why I got into social media now. So the reason I focused into it now, really, purely, was I think, so going back to me being a people person, I'm based all over the UK. Many people are. People get to see you sometimes at events, or if I'm out on the field with my team, half an hour, 40 minutes here or there. But they get to see me with the work cap on, right? Which is great. But the conversation and the icebreaker when I meet someone now is not about, okay, you're Aldermore, straight into the meet and drink. It's out, oh yeah, you're the guy that I've seen on LinkedIn, and your kid, how's your little girls doing this, that, and the other? And I think that's really nice. But then that's a great icebreaker to lead into Aldermore and the job that I do and the team and the work that we do. Far easier,
Definitely.
And I do, and there's two things really, because I do some posts around that. I bring the family into it, and I do, just general life really on what I do. I do tend to keep it. I don't actually, if you look back on the posts, I don't really make them Aldermore centric at all. If anything, then, well, those that are listening, do your own research. Have a look at my LinkedIn profile. Hardly any of it is related to Aldermore whatsoever. It's about the industry, me, the people, some comedy stuff.
The comedy stuff. And that's it. No, but it is, because I was just writing down there when you were sort of saying about that, because when I do a bit of research, the guest, let's look at what your profiles look like. Let's look at just social media. What can I find out about Matt? And that was the thing of, the message that I was getting was about you, not about Aldermore. Aldermore's there. You can see the brand. You can see that sort of from a. I'm just looking at your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
I can sort of see what you do. You part of, but it's not. It's just a subtle talk about Aldermore, whereas it's more about you. And this goes back to this is why I'm enjoying recording this so much, because it is about you. Your mentality is about people buying into you. It doesn't matter. And that's the thing. Like, and I'm not saying that you're going to work for anybody else, because I know you love what you do and part of that thing. But wherever you would go, people would get that still about you kind of thing. Whereas with other people, when it's just about the business brand or the lender or stuff like that, it's like, well, if they ever change, it'd be like, whoa, hang on a minute, well, it'd be we wouldn't know them. Whereas we feel as though through the power of social media that I know you a little bit, like you say, about your family and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and that's the key for me is you have to obviously, because I'm employed clearly by a bank, I can't be completely, I say belt and buckled, should we call it? Because there are rules that I can't promote products. I don't promote products online because it's not financially right, but also I can't financially promote. There are rules, and that's fine. But for me, again, going back down to the whole point of what we do is about people, right? And you have to. It's about, you could meet me in the street and only see me on LinkedIn. I don't like to be different. If you've seen a video of me, messing about or doing something funny on LinkedIn, I've got a sense of humor, but I'm very serious in what I do. I enjoy my job. That doesn't mean that that I still crack jokes around the office. Don't get me wrong, but when I'm here, but it's just you have to be you. And my team will tell you the same thing. There's a team of 10 working for me in a minute from Scotland all the way down to Cornwall, right? And you probably think that some people in sales roles, right, they talk about figures, what do you want to get from this lender firm, broker firm? What do you think about this against target? I'm not interested, right? Because you start with the people. And the big thing that I always ask my guys is, what do you want? So let's say you visited a broker firm for the very first time. What do you want them to think of you? Before you go in there, I ask the question, what do you want them to think of you when you've left? That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you've got a cheap rate, if you've got a great product, if your service is brilliant or not as a bank. What matters is, what do you want them to think of you though, right? Because irrespective of the company you work for, you are representing you, your brand. So take the team and the job that I do, right? My team represent the brand, the bank, on a regional scale. It's like having a franchise. So if I cover the northwest of England, I am the name of Aldermore for the northwest of England, right? That means that regardless of what Aldermore do, they have to buy into me. So it's irrelevant for what I want out of the company in terms of business and, what my product is and what my offering is in the main. If I'm a good person and I understand their business and I want to help them and I can help them as a broker, that's what matters to me. And that's how I set the guys up to go out there and think, right, what do I want? And then, of course, we build on that. If you identify, you tell me what you want people to think of you as their representative in the field. Great. Now, how can we do that? How can I help you? How can you help yourself? How can we put things in place to make sure that you become the person you want to be, rather than you get X amount of sales per day? It's a completely different way of looking at it for me.
It is an absolute totally different way of looking at it. And I think for the mortgage brokers that are listening, if you went into a first appointment, that's sort of taking that, your thought process, and following it through, thinking from a client perspective, because that's the way that, like, I would look at it as a broker for the first time. We go on an induction, we're told by the networks, or we're told by his employer, right, you need to do this, go through this, talk about this, go through this. And it's all about things what you need to do as a broker. Whereas I talk about, if you start with the first thing you talk about is like, well, there's my business card, this is my proposition brochure, like, nobody's going to buy from you. What's the, like, you're not different, it's just boring, and you're not actually, all you're doing is imposing what you want to get out of the meeting on that client. But actually, the most vital part of that appointment is that client. So the first thing you should be doing is, like you said, is like, you're thinking, well, what do I want to get out of that meeting? So, like, flipping on its head, like, from a broker's point of view, yes, you wanted these certain things you want to get out of the meeting, but you need to understand that client And it's not just about the best rate and about that. They want that service. And I think that's, so if you've got that mindset as a broker going into your first appointment, a similar sort of thing to where you talk about with your team of going into their meetings and transferring those sort of skills, because it's you. That's what they're buying into, isn't it? It's you. It doesn't matter whether you've got the best rate or not. We've all had clients that will not necessarily go for the cheapest rate, but they trust and work with you because it's you that they want to work with.
It is, and nail on the head there. I mean, how you would have spoke to hundreds of customers over the years that go, I've just seen that rate out with that massive high street bank that starts with a 1. You know, I want a bit of that. It's not available for everybody. But if you lead that conversation with, let's go looking for that, and inevitably you don't get that, they're disappointed and they might go elsewhere. Whereas you need to start with, what are they after? What's the people? What are the end game's the mortgage, right? But let's fill the gaps, you know. And the same for us. The end game is we want to get mortgage business. We want brokers to support us. We want to lend to customers that are potentially being let down by other lenders that don't fit their criteria, which they've all got the criteria and risks, but we have ours and we've got, you know, an option to pull them into our journey. However, if we go out there just saying, right, here's our rates, here's our criteria, you have to fit people to those boxes. I don't do that. What I do is, here's our brand, here's our offering, here's what we help. How can we help you? What kind of customers do you get? What are you trying to do with your business? And then it's absolutely like that first mortgage appointment. You can't go in there talking about, right, well, these people have this rate available and we'll aim for that. So let's just put all our eggs in that basket. And when that basket cracks, you don't make an omelette, you make a mess, right? Whereas what we're trying to do here is maybe make an omelette if there are a few cracked eggs. And it's about talking in general terms, doing a proper fact find for both, you know, customer for you guys and also on the broker for us to understand what do these people after, what is their needs. If something doesn't quite work with the top lenders, have I got an option? And that's how I want to be promoted, with the option, you know, and with the option based on what I feel your customers currently, from the conversation we've had, could fit our brand, rather than, guess for what, we do this to this LTV at this price. Doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't. But the thing is, it's like I said, you'll be more memorable that way. I think from a broker's point of view, brokers just want an easy life. They just want to, they want the ideal. Because I work with brokers that are new into the industry and they go on a training course and everybody's got a 20% deposit, everybody's got enough income and they've never had a bad thing done in their life kind of thing. And then they get into the broker world, it's like, well, they never told us about this on training. They never, and I think that's where I encourage the brokers to build relationships with the lenders and the development managers of the lenders, because it's about that relationship you have, and you need to be memorable in that way. You're not going to be memorable by the 1 point, like you say, right, well, you've got the 1.9 rate today, but then next week you're on the 3. It's like, well, no, you need to be memorable for the right reasons, and brokers want an easy life, going back to my point. But if they've got that relationship and they're more likely to turn to somebody that they know and trust, like you and yourself and your team, because they've got that relationship, they know who your kids are, they know, it's more of a conversation of, do you know what, I've got this case, what can we, like, and it's more of a conversational thing. That's where it counts, because then the brokers won't just see it as, right, I need to sit here now with my research and I've got to like go through my, it's more of an interesting conversation than a quick criteria, computer says no situation going on. You need to be memorable, and that's clearly from you and your team. That's what you're looking for from a broker relationship.
Yeah. And you know, I want to just touch on something really key you mentioned there, which is about the training, because so many people in the broker world and the mortgage world, you know, in terms of working for lenders, think of this perfect world. Everyone's got 20%, everyone's got a 10, you know, it's dead easy getting a mortgage, everyone's employed and there's non-fluctuating income. What a world that would be, right? But it's not. So how do we actually help with that? And one of the things that me and my team always promote people to do, we've all seen the emails that a lot of brokers send, and, you know, it's maybe a big BCC. I've got this case, here's all the issues, can someone come back and help me with it, right? And it's a great way of doing it. This is before, you know, the likes of Criteria Hub and all that came in.
Yeah.
Save them all them emails, save them, right? Now, obviously, take out any customer details that are in there and get rid of that, but the inquiry itself and the complexities, save them. Any new starters, let's say you've got 20 of them emails, the first thing that you should be doing is, right, see them, go and find me a lender that would do that case. Don't go on Criteria Hub and cheat. Do it the old school way, because if you do it that way, yeah, your life is so much easier, right? Because, I mean, I mean this with the greatest respect to every bit of tech, not just like the criteria hubs and so on and so forth. But so I've got this thing that sometimes, at some point, right, is tech going to make us a little bit stupid, right? And I say that with the greatest intent, but I can tell Alexa to find a radio station that plays the football at 3:00 if I can't watch the match, right? 5 years ago, I'd have to find that myself, right? And even then, finding it myself meant just going out of Google and find out which station would do it. Now, yes, it's making everything a lot easier, but do you know if one of them services fails, or you dare I say it, your broadband goes down, my God, what do? You have to pick the phone up and speak to people, right? Having the knowledge of how to place, you will never be able to bank in your mind, I've got a lender for every type of scenario, right? But I guarantee you, if you stock 10, 15, 20 complex emails where you've had to rummage around to try and find a lender and ask your new starter brokers to try and find them lenders and why, honestly, that will do you a world of good. Because you'll see, right? And again, people listening take this with the greatest respect. The people that may have not replaced a case that fell off from a lender that they thought would go to because they've got a 20% deposit and they've got good income but might be fluctuating, that they say no for whatever reason. Maybe it's score, maybe it's the income fluctuations, whatever it is. Now, the challenge then is, does that firm retain that customer and replace them? Yeah, because what you don't want is the broker across the road getting that lead off that customer that was disheartened and they place it with ease because they've gone through, dare I say it, the school of hard knocks using the old way of getting a case. And that's the bit where even if you just give someone 10% of that knowledge and that training on how to actually find a mortgage deal before all the tech came in, you're onto an absolute winner.
Definitely. And how much more rewarding is it when you've gone through that process, then gone, just like you say, I'll come back to the Alexa point in a second because I'm keen to talk about that. But then how much rewarding is it when you've actually gone out there, old school, found that lender? You're more likely to retain that information. You're more likely to retain what went on. But you've actually put in because that's one thing that does frustrate me, is that when I see things where we see social media posts, which I know there's a lot of self-promoting in the social media posts, but broker, like a client will convert a client who been told no by 3 different brokers and things like that. So that doesn't mean that all you've and this is my simplicity, all you've done is do your job. That is what your job is. It's because you've got this scenario and that shape is whatever shape it is, you've got to find a lender that matches that shape and you've got to go through a set process. All you've done is cared and gone through a bit more thoughts and a bit more process to actually find that lender for the client. I think that, and yes, that is very, very a simple way of looking at it, but that's I would rather do it that way. Yes, we use criteria and knowledge bank and all those, the different ones to make life as a starting point, but you've still got to put in the graph to find the right lender and make sure that clients offered the best outcome for them.
Yeah, but it gives you you get a broader understanding of the market, and you do, not that you can pigeonhole customers, but you do tend to get a feel of, right, I know that person's not going to fit their outlook on life, right? Let's say it's a lender that credit scores. That's not going to work for them if you see in the credit file. So then you've got this tier of lenders to work with. And if you knew what they're about, then great. If you know it's a bit more different to that, maybe they've got income that they're not going to take, you can whittle it down a bit. Then you're doing some research around a smaller pool of lenders. Then it gets into the detail. That's when, going right back to the beginning of the story, the people. Who do I pick the phone up to first? Is it the person that gives me a product guide and says we're the greatest on rate at the moment? Or is it the person that asks you questions about you and your brand to help you at a time when you needed it? You're going to ring them first, right? That's where it's all about. Because like I said, when your product dies, you die with it.
Definitely. And that's the thing, it is key to, again, building on you and your personal brand. And that's the whole point of this, is about you and your personal brand. And I think that's when you're looking back and think about, you've had this client, you've had that client scenario, you need to reflect. I talk a little bit about reflection and review and things like that. And funnily enough, as a firm, we talked about this recently, is you get to the end of that client journey and you've got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, do you know what, did I give that client the attention it deserved? And did I really pick up every stone? Did I really do the research that I needed to do to get that client mortgage? Because when you do, and you get that case and you convert that client, you've got a client for life. They're not going to go anywhere else because you've taken the time to really do your research and get them. Because I think brokers sometimes, some do just lose the reality that actually, because it's hard when it's your job. This is your job day in, day out. But we're taking that aside and going back to the mortgages are boring. This is life-changing for a lot of clients. People moving home, finding the house, saving for the deposit, getting on the property ladder, changing, moving, getting away from all these different things that people, why people move, divorces, all those different things. It's life-changing. And I think sometimes brokers need to not just sort of look at this as a sort of like a funnel of, they actually need to open up and go, do you know what? Have I done enough for that client? Have I really gone through the whole process of trying to source the right lender for this client? Because, or have I just gone, do you know what? Nah, it's a bit of hard work and I've got plenty of other new stuff coming in. I've got new leads coming that I need to source. Or actually, did they do a thorough job? And I think that's what the true role of a broker is, to do, to go to the ends of the earth and then look at yourself and, do you know what? I couldn't have done anything more. It's the same with protection, which we're not going to talk like it's the same with protection conversations and stuff like that. And we'll probably do another podcast about that conversation. But that for me is what a true broker is. It's like literally you've got this client and you cannot do anything more. You're giving that 110%, which is what you want from somebody wearing a red shirt at Old Trafford on a Saturday afternoon. But that's another story for you, mate.
Shadow, yeah, it definitely is, yeah. Oh, yeah, what a weekend that was. But,
sorry, I've just thrown that grenade in the middle there. Just so thrown in there.
But yeah, do you know, I get so many of them grenades nowadays. But to be fair, I've ridden away for many years. You know, I followed United home and away so much over the years when they were really good as well, and I've seen a lot of it. I've seen so much success. I can take some hard times. I'm all right about that. But you know, just going back to that point there about looking after your client, you're right. And success, when brokers are really busy, and you mentioned juggling new business, and it's such a great time to be in. And you get to the end of the year, and you think, you know what, I've got 300 customers to mortgages this year. That's a great success story. For me, the greatest success story is the percentage of them that come back to you next time. You know, that's the biggest one for me. Because if you're doing 300 every year, but you're only retaining 50 of them when they come round to renew, you know, there's more to be done there. Client retention is far better than for me in the long term, because at the short term, of course, you need leads. You need leads to get you going, to put food on the table, right? But the reality is, if you lose them every year, fine. But if you retain the high percentage because of the service that you offer, that's the winning mentality. Because you just do it. And to be fair, you know, you mentioned the protection conversation. There's so much going on there. Brokers can be the home for a one-stop shop. You've probably had many clients over the year that have asked you random questions about what to do with his credit card. Have you got any utilities in mind? Do you know how I can get this sorted? And you become a bit of an agony aunt sometimes, you know, for customers.
That
exactly.
Yeah. Me, I feel like a counselor. Yeah. I'm being counselling again today.
But that customer will stay with you. You know, they just will, and that's something that's the joyous part of the role. And that, again, you know, I know I harp on about it and a broken record, but that's the people side of it. It's not a transaction. This is a life-changing moment for everybody. You don't just go and get a mortgage. You know, it is easier in the world. It is easier to get a mortgage in terms of actually start the ball rolling, not to physically get the money, because it's obviously more challenging now because there's so many different options available, different complexities. But there's thousands and thousands of people that could help advise a customer on a mortgage. It's finding the right one, which is hard for the customer. So you have to market yourself as the right one, right? But then you have to play that out and be the right one so they stay with you, you know? And there's nothing worse. And I've seen it, and it's not great to be part of, but, you know, when you hear a broker that's taken on a new customer because the ex-broker didn't do the job that they signed them up for. I do feel a little bit, you know, harsh, because they may have had their own challenges going on. It's just you know, it's just their own thing, really. But for me, is you're in it for the long term. You know, if you sign a customer up for a 30-year term, and they're on a 2-year fixed, at most, you know that for the next 30 years, you're going to speak to them quite often, hopefully, and your job is to keep them speaking to you, assuming you want a working mortgage for 30 years. Because believe it or not, I'm only 19. I look about 35, right? So, you know, I've aged a lot working in mortgages, as we all have. But, you know, it's a rewarding
place. Start young in Aldermore then, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah. I was outside at 10. Yeah.
But it is like the retention is a massive thing. It's like we work hard to get the client and get that lead, and then we we don't have any dealings and expect them to come back, and there's no sort of touch points during the duration, which is for me is a bit criminal, because I think it's about that relationship you have. But there is no greater feeling that I spoke to a broker the other day, and they sort of said that they spoke to a client 2 years ago. The client was in a bad situation 2 years ago. The broker sat down with them, gave them clear direction on what they needed to do. Come back to me if you've got any questions. Kept sense checking every sort of 3-6 months, making sure that. And then they've signed them up this week. They've signed them up on a mortgage, and that client was going to go nowhere else. They're going to refer everybody to you, and it's just about, like you said, the long term thing. It is a long term job. Mortgage broking is a long term, and the thing is, you tend to find that once somebody's been in it, just tends to be about 2 years in. I think once you've gone through the grounding of the first 2 years, I think once you get past that stage, I think then it does become easier. You know the criteria better, and you find better your jobs. You find your own process, and you get your process nailed and find it easier. But client retention's a massive thing, and you need to be. And that's something sometimes like where brokers go, oh, well, I got on really well with them in time. I've not spoken to them for the last 3 years or 4 years, whatever the case may be. And now I've got a clawback, or they've done the remortgages, and I've not done. They're not talking to me about the remortgage. They won't, because there's all these other people all these thousands of people out there that will try and get their business. And so you've got to be the one that they go back to. So, and you're like you say, you've already done the icebreaker, you've already done the trust and the rapport and all those things. You've got that client. Well, you've got to work as hard to retain that client as what you did to gain it in the first place.
You have, and I think about there's some phenomenally massive companies in the world. Let's take Amazon, for example, right? And you've only got to think about, if Amazon are working hard to retain you using their services currently, right? You have to, a ground level broker's got to be thinking of retention first. You can go on Amazon. If I order something that I know is perishable, let's just say a big box of felt tips for the kids, right? I know that I'll be recommended felt tips in the near future to buy again. Buy this again, buy that again, because they want me to keep using them, right? Yeah. Now, if Amazon are doing that, we should all be doing it, because they've changed the way the world works. You can get anything on there nowadays: wine, books, anything. And if they have to work hard to keep customers going back to their site to purchase, which in theory they don't have to work that hard, but if they're promoting that to you, you should do that as a broker. And a couple of tips for me: I've seen it work in my team. One of the members of staff that works for me, we did a fantastic job on onboarding a very decent broker. And do you know what? Not once was an opening engagement about mortgages. Not once. This broker was a big Formula One fan. So every Friday, the BDM sent him a Formula One quiz or quick news update around the F1. I'm not into that, but whatever they talked about was obviously about cars and tyres or what have you. But you know what happened? The broker started using us. And actually, we found out that the emails that he was replying to wasn't to do with product launches and rates and criteria. It was the F1 quiz, and so thinking that as a broker, what do I know about my clients that I could do every single year? A virtual birthday card, just something like that. Yeah. That's simple, I've got your birthday. I've got consent to keep these details as part of your introduction. Send their birthday card. You'll be surprised how many people reply to that with a quick comment. Oh, just out of interest, I'm looking to put an extension on my home. Porting question, further advance, second charge, stuff like that, out of nowhere. And the same happens with social media, because the posts, and I mentioned about, I may have mentioned before, maybe on some social media posts I've done, but it's a bit like chasing vanity on social media. It doesn't matter about likes and comments and shares. It does not matter. It matters that if the one person that engages with that, contacts you, speaks to you about on that post, and you gain business out of that, it's a win. I see that often. I don't get thousands of likes on a post. I don't get hundreds of comments. But I'll tell you what I do get: people picking the phone up, people messaging me, people talking to me in the field about, oh, I've seen that post. Why are you here? Move on to business. That initial icebreaker that gets that lead in, the same can happen with, client retention, virtual birthday card every year. If you've got enough surplus cash, then maybe even a little, a card and maybe a Prezi, I don't know. But these little things, they mean quite a lot to people, and they remember for that.
They do. And the other thing, what people tend to miss out on is, and what has a bigger impact, because I've seen this, is kids' birthdays. So when you've got clients, kids' birthdays, and you just send that message of like, oh, like happy birthday to little Johnny this like on Saturday kind of thing. I bet you're gonna have a busy weekend. It's just that when you not only relate to them as people, but then you pick up on the kid side of things, then that's a massive thing as well for people. They'll remember you even more because actually you look like you care, which I know you are, but you look like you're caring about something that they care about too, kind of thing. So it's just, does that make sense from a mindset and psychology point of view?
It definitely does, and it gets you bought into them as people a lot more, and you interact. One of the mortgage clubs I look after, actually, one of the mortgage clubs, I get on really well with the person that I have a relationship with there, and do you know, one of the very first social posts that I kind of did way back, probably 15 months ago now, it was a short video of me and my daughter. I had to homeschool her because my wife's a teacher. So she was in school teaching the kids that had to go in. I was at home juggling the day job and being a teacher, trying to teach year 2 maths in a job where maths is part of the day gig here, right? Mind blown, right? But anyway, so I did a comedic video, you know, broke down the lessons, made it a bit fun, and it went off on social a bit. I got a lot of interactions from it, and following that, a week later, the conversation I was having was supposed to be a business meeting, right? The first thing, let's forget the business. Listen, I'm talking about this homeschooling, right? How can I make it easier? Where can I get some resources? So we're having this conversation about getting easier resources for the kids' homeschooling before we even got down to business. And the call was already booked in. It was intended to talk purely about distribution business. And the point of that is that you're right. Honing in on something that's personal can open the doors to not just a better opportunity for a B2B sales, but to people to get relationships and to prevent, it's a grander scale of things. You can make really good friends out of it as well. And you can help each other through that journey that you're on.
Definitely.
That was a really nice thing. I still speak to this person, every fortnight, all the time. And it's just, that came from a social post, the main part of that relationship, which is brilliant. And a sentimental one of
that. It is. It's just trying to obviously you can relate to that and you can sort of see that it is about knowing them as, they're not just seen as a number. They're not just seen as it's another, one of the 300 that I'm going to sign up this year, or one of the things. It is for sort of more personal, and you've got to think that way as a broker. You've got to just think of, rather than just thinking of the numbers, these are people that you're interacting with. So, but yeah, it is, retention is a massive thing, and having that. But the thing is, like you say, you're not selling the rate, you're not selling that. You're just talking about homeschooling, which everybody was going through at that time. Well, most people were going through those sort of frustrations at that time of homeschooling. Yeah, I don't care about the rates. I don't care what you're offering. How am I going to get the homeschooling sorted out? And that was a big deal. But they said that people worry too much about, I forget the word that you use, but people worry too much about how many likes have I got, how many views have I got, how many why are you not liking my post? Why I posted that 10 minutes ago and you're not, and my friends aren't even liking it, kind of things. Wow, if you're doing it just for the likes and posts, I question why you're doing it in the first place. Whereas, like you say, for you, it's like for me, doing the podcast, doing that. I never ever thought, this is not about, if I can help one broker get into the mortgage broker world, or one broker go self-employed, or one broker create their own business, or whatever, that means the world to me. Not how many people view it, how many people like it, how many, and all those things. I'm not doing it for that. It's about educating people and helping people and supporting people, and not for, oh my God, I've only had 10 likes on this video kind of thing. What's I must be doing something wrong. It's like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter to most people. Don't get me wrong. If you're in that pot of people that survive on YouTube income, if you're a full-time, you have to worry about likes and views. But that then you have to start off with, you only get them by putting content out that's relevant for your audience. It has to be your audience. It has to be anything. If you're an affiliate of a brand, you can't just say, right, there's 7 billion people on the planet. If I can get a third to buy, I'm going to retire in 2 years. That's not how it works. If you can create a micro, and a lot of people talk about micro niches, in broking, where you might specify in adverse credit, you might specify in adverse credit for self-employed, you might really niche down to create an audience. they're probably the people that want to focus on traction on social media and likes and comments to try and get that. But in reality, what does social media bring you? It brings you a voice, it brings you a personality, it puts a voice and a face to a name that you see often potentially. The biggest thing for me is that it allows just you to be you. If you're using social media to be anything but yourself, you're doing it wrong in my eyes. You are, because the whole point of it is you do not want to turn up to an event, right, and go, oh, he's well different than he is on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody is going to like, no one's going to meet me and say, wow, he's quiet. He doesn't talk much. He's tall. I'm not tall. Actually, that's interesting. One of the things that I get quite a lot, this is funny, right? People see me a lot on social media, and I'll tell you what's really funny. And I always hit them with this. The first thing they say is, oh, you're different than you are online. And I go, I know what you mean by that. I'm 5'7". You think I'm going to be a bit taller, don't you? So I'm a lot smaller than you think. And immediately you see the blush and you think, look, that don't take offense. I'm all right about it, but that's what they mean. And I think, but fine, you've got to be the person you are.
You are.
You have to be.
Absolutely. I think that I'm a big advocate of that. And I didn't pick up on that time when you made that comment, but there is clearly no hidden agenda with you. You are who you are. What you see online is you. So if I met you on a Friday night, or if I met you or whatever, it would be the same as what I see online. And I think that's a big thing. It's like, that's who you are. There's no need to people like sort of get these guises and online and go, this is it. And then in reality, you meet up with them and go, oh, like, wow, that's not what I expected, kind of thing. So you spend half initial meeting trying to reprocess in your head what you thought this person was going to be like, because actually from what you'd seen, whereas if you just make life a lot easier, be who you are, no bull, no hidden agenda, no nothing, and that's how it should be. That, like, people buy into you, so they don't want to buy into something that then when they meet up is totally different, because then you'll just, all those things you've done to build the trust, build the rapport and all those things will just come crashing down, because they go, I'm meeting a new person for this first time, and you've done more damage because you're thinking, well, there's nothing like what I thought it was going to be like.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Trust is key in everything, and that's the big thing. And then thinking longevity. If you know different to how they came across you the first time and you build that trust, how likely are they to use you again for a service? Extremely likely. Flip it on its head and you just, this great person online, but when they meet you, you're dull as dishwater and you're not very, educational, or you're not very interesting to speak to, and you've not got their interest at heart, they ain't going to use you again, No, and that's, you've just got to, and some people aren't like that, some people aren't great with people, and that's not an issue at all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you can't continue to retain people and work on that customer longevity, because you've got different skills that I haven't got, or people like me haven't got. But, I'm probably just wired to the moon a little bit. So, and I just.
But even if you are, like, you are who you still, if that's who you are, you still be that way on social media. It's fine. It's okay, because people will relate to you. People will relate to that. There was people, 7 billion or whatever is on the planet. People will relate to. There is people like you out there. So you don't need to look for the masses. It's a case of, well, if you are like that and that's your personality and that's who you are, that's okay to post stuff like that, because people will relate to that. People will not, but people will relate to it. It's the same thing as if you were very personable and things like that online and social media. There will be people that will relate to it and people that won't relate to it. It's just how it is. Just be who you are, be true to yourself, and post about, like, get your personality, your true personality out on your social media.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah,
definitely. Matt, we've gone on for an hour, I knew this was going to be the case. Today we've got other things to talk about, discuss, and I don't want to talk about very little things. But as always, it just goes on, and we talk up on a tangent. We talked about some really sort of good stuff, and I've enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, is there anything we've missed off that you really wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, well, listen, I could talk all day. You've got that impression already, right? And you know what? If you're a fan to the part 2, I'm well up for it. I'm good for a sequel. I'm not like Spielberg, so I'm all right for that. I think we'll
do a part 2. I'll hold you that, mate.
I'll definitely. I'm keen for a part 2 if you want to do it. The thing that I really want to just leave you with, and this might lead into a part 2 actually, something you may have heard me talk about on Social for Brokers podcast, is about how can you make yourself different, right? Because I talked about Amazon before. What Amazon sell, everyone sells. They just sell it cheaper and quicker. That's not always the right answer. And actually, in our world, cheaper and quicker is definitely not the right answer, because not everyone can get cheaper and quicker, right? So it's about two things really. One, to leave you with: social media, be yourself. If you're not yourself, that's your problem, and that's going to cause you a problem, I think. Right? So be yourself, and you just need to be yourself for everybody's reasoning, not just yours, if that makes sense, right? Because people will buy into you. And the last thing is that if you're going to promote your brand, business, culture, product, whatever that may be, you have to think of these 3 core pillars. What's the issue you're trying to solve? What's the offer that you have? Them 2, by the way, thousands of different people. Everyone's got issues. I can't get a mortgage, right? I need a mortgage. Everyone offers mortgages. Great. How are you different? If you can be different, people will use you for the right reasons. And if you can do that, you will be successful. And yeah, anyone listening to this want to hear me spat about that more, I'm glad that I'll link up with you individually and speak about that and tell you how I could help, how we could help, and stuff like that. But if you want to hear more detail, maybe we could do a part 2 in the future and I can talk purely about that. Who knows?
Definitely. No, we will. I will sort of extend the invite, get you back on the podcast, and we can talk further about it, because Matt, I've enjoyed the last hour talking to you, hearing about you. And really what I love is sort of getting to know people a lot more in terms of what they really thinking and the mindset and their attitude and motivation, all those different things. And I feel as though I do know you a lot more than what I did when we first started out. So Matt, looking forward to already recording part 2. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.